Hi, I'm Ted Price from Insomniac Games. On today's episode of the Game Maker's Notebook, I had an incredibly enjoyable and spirited conversation with Josef Fares, writer, director, and founder of Hazelight Studios. Hazelight is known for making superb co-op story-driven games, including their recently released and truly delightful It Takes Two. Josef and I covered a huge variety of topics, including how Hazelight delivers such an insane amount of gameplay variety in their games. We also talked about dedication to two-player games and what it means for their core design, and we dove deep into the pros and cons of replayability. Please join us for these topics and much, much more.
Welcome to the Game Maker's Notebook, a podcast featuring a series of in-depth one-on-one conversations between game makers providing a thoughtful, intimate perspective on the business and craft of interactive entertainment. The Game Maker's Notebook is presented by the Academy of Interactive Arts and Sciences, a member-driven organization dedicated to the recognition and advancement of interactive entertainment.
All right, Josef, thank you so much for being on the show.
No problem, man. It's an honor being here. Where are you at? You're at home in your living room, or where is it?
I am at home, yes.
Oh, cool.
Most of us at Insomniac at this point are still at home as everybody gets vaccinated. Are you at home right now, or are you in your office?
I never did the home thing. In Sweden, we didn't have the same restrictions. So we kind of I was always at the office. We've always had 50 to 20 people at office. We were around 60, 65 people at Hazelight. So, but I would say 80% of the studio is at home. I was very skeptical in the beginning working from home, but now I'm slowly starting to understand the benefits with it,
What do you think are the biggest benefits for working at home?
I mean, look, there are benefits that people can focus a little bit more. And you can at some points be a little bit more productive. And I think there are some benefits that you can decide how you want to, put up or lay out your day or times. But I would say I started with such a negative, I was so negatively against it in the beginning. So right now it feels more normal, but I will never, ever say that it is better than working together, because the physical interaction of being with another person is something that it's impossible to create, because the creative environment when you're in a room and when you're talking about an idea or something, it's impossible to do with Zoom, because you lose so much nuances and a touch of creativity that's not really there. So it is possible, but it's not it is not for me, at least. I'm a very kind of a physical person. I mean, I know this is a podcast, but I like to wave and touch and jump on the table and stuff like that. So it's very important for me, and I think and I hope, and also I think it's important that we physically are close to each other. I think this whole pandemic will affect us emotionally way more than we think, actually. I mean, then I'm still happy that people can still work from home and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, I think emotionally, the physical connection, that just the fact that it's, you got to ask a person if you can shake his or her hand. It's something weird, and I think there's something extremely sad about that, and I think it will affect us. I mean, in some way, but hopefully things will get back quite soon.
Do you see that kind of creeping into games at some point? Those subtleties?
It might be. I think it might. I think you definitely lose something when you're not together. I mean, I know there are. I just listened to the podcast last time, and I know there are studios working like that, doing those like that. And if you are experienced working like that the whole time, fine. But if you are, if you're making something that is quite tricky and haven't really been done before, it's really hard. When you're not together in a room, there's something that you lose with the creative process. It's hard to explain. If it's gonna get into gaming, I'm not really sure how it would get to gaming, but it's hard for me to give you an exact idea what would be the difference. But I for sure miss the physical interaction. Obviously, the mocap and stuff, you still have to to be in the same room to do.
Yeah, that's a huge challenge, and it has been a huge challenge, I think, for a lot of studios during the pandemic. One thing though I see in your games, and especially in It Takes Two, is the so much variety when it comes to how the characters physically interact. I can imagine you as a very expressive person spending a lot of time with a programmer or designer acting it out. Do you tend to do that?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I am pretty much mocapping. I did all of the way out as well as there's a character called Dr. Hakim, which is a crazy book, so I did the mocap for that as well. But yes, I am a very physical guy. The way I talk, the way, I get so excited with the team. If you would like this, like I literally like can jump up on table and say like, this is so amazingly good, this is fantastic. I can like it's almost like I don't know, you can feel, it's like the passion is so much there, so you can like feel it pumping through your blood. And I like, but I think one of my things is I can get people very excited. And I think some of them might think like, where do you get the self-confidence from? But I just can't help it. I mean, sometimes I play with the idea like, let's pretend to not be self-confident. Let's be a bit insecure, but I can't help it because there's such a trust and belief in the vision and what games we're doing. So it never ever crossed my mind that what we're doing is not good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now that does not mean I never second question stuff and try to figure out. But it's more, see it like this. It's more that I make sure the focus is not me thinking, is this good, not good? No, the focus that it takes is that I focus on the problems that we have instead of like focusing, is this good or bad? Because that's waste of energy. That focus should go on like, okay, how do we fix this mechanic? What do we do this about that? Or how do we fix this? Look, my English is not the best. So I sometimes change what you ask because I have so much in my head. But I think you asked something with the variety of gameplay, or did I?
Well, I was talking about the prototyping mechanics and how important it is to be there physically. Because I can imagine you picking up a controller, playing with it, handing it back to somebody and saying, well, let's try X, right?
For
and
sure.
that back and forth switching in when you're both physically present can be useful.
Yes, because it's interesting you say that now, because right now we got 2 designers in-house and 8 of them others are from home. And the one that are in here, I'm talking to them, like say, what about this? What about that? Okay, what about if you do this? And there is a different kind of communication. But it's hard to say if the mechanics are or if the levels we're building physically together are different than the others, because we strongly believe in a huge variety of gameplay. I will go into why I think that, but so it's hard to say if it's the better way or not. But for sure, it gives more creative energy to sit together in a room. It's impossible to argue against that. I think it might be that I come from movie background. Like I've always together with the team interacting. There's something to it that is, I think, super good, and I hope not disappear.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned movies, because a lot of our listeners may not know that you have been a successful feature film director, even though I know that in the mainstream media, you're talked about as a film director as well.
Yeah.
But I've never talked to somebody who's directed feature films and has built big games. So I don't want to ask you necessarily about the film career, but I want to ask you, do you remember the moment you decided to transition from film to games?
All right. So here's the thing. I'm always been a huge passionate gamer, a hardcore gamer, whatever you call it. Like, okay, just to give you an example, if someone told me music or gaming, what do you choose? I would say games with no second question. That's how much I love. I mean, I literally love games, and I've been doing this since I was very young. Since I was born in Lebanon, I think I was like 6 or 7 years when I got the first Atari and then Nintendo. So I really literally love games. And I've always been wanted to love storytelling. I did like comics when I was young and stuff. And when I moved to Sweden, I think at that time, I managed to borrow a camera from a friend's father, and I started making short movies. So I really wanted to storytell. Now, with that in mind, I always had gaming in the back of the head. But at that time, it was super hard. I mean, you know this. I mean, for me as a young kid, like how do I mean, I wasn't like a particularly skilled at programming. The programs were, I mean, I literally did not have internet as well. So it was very hard. So I started making movies and put all my energy. And when I put my, head into something, it really, I just have so self-confidence that it will happen. So now when I was 17, I was like, okay, this is my thing. I'm going to become a film director. I literally knew it. And then I did, I think my first feature film, I was 22 years old. And it became the #1 box office hit in Sweden, actually, and sold like to 20, 30 countries outside. So it was super hit. But all the time, I was like talking about games and media all the time, like how good they are, blah, 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 like every interview. And this went on for every movie I did. And during the 5th movie, I've done 5 or 6 features, 5 features actually I did, and a huge amount of shorts. There were they invited me because the gaming industry in Sweden is obviously quite big. We have quite a lot of studios here that are very famous. You know, I mean, DICE, and yeah, I could go on. The list is huge. So they were interested. Like, who is this guy that always? I mean, they knew me, my name, because I'm like well known in Sweden, and they started to invite me to, like, okay, can you talk about story, blah blah blah, you know, because they were like interested in and storytelling in gaming. And when I went there, I just said, like, would it be nice to do a game? But for me, it was just a dream come true. But eventually, there was one guy called Steen, and he had some kind of in charge of some kind of education. He said to me, like, hey, we got a couple of students during the summertime here. Would you want to do a demo or something? You got like 8 weeks. And for me, like, wow, that would be amazing. The same night, I came up with the concept for Brothers, A Tale of Two Sons, the way that you control 2 brothers with 1 stick. And I started doing it there. So I made my first prototype with a super short team. And for me, it was it was living a dream pretty much. Like, wow, just doing an actual game where you can control your own characters. And I still have those demos today. It's so cool to have. And then I did another demo with that. And I tried to show it to other developers. And they really liked the idea, but they were still quite skeptical. But then, like, I decided, okay, I'm going to drop all the films, and then I'm going to fully focus on gaming and keep following my dream. And that was actually, and I was, in a sense, I was a bit lucky, because at that time there was a studio called Starbreeze, and they were just about to, like, start using Unreal Engine 3. And they had a small team, kind of a test team, to test the product, or the engine. And I happened to show the CEO at that time the demo I had, and he got excited. He said, okay, let's go. And I'm like, okay, let's do it. And then we started, and then the rest is history. But it was so much, like, it was so tough in the beginning, let me tell you that, because I think, like, many designers and people were like, no, that's not how you do games. You can't do it like this. You can't do it like this. And I'm like, no, yes. I mean, and I know there are 2 or 3, at least 4 people, like, didn't want to continue working with Brothers because they didn't like the way I thought of gaming. You know, it wasn't any bad, you know, like that, but it was just like, this not gonna work, you know.
Well, you started with a pretty challenging concept as well. I mean, I remember Brothers being some just unusual. It was, I think you took a huge risk and you made it work. So for your first game, instead of just copying, say, a first-person shooter or doing something that had been done before, you kind of jumped off the cliff.
Yeah, for sure. And it felt for me, I mean, all Brothers, look, my love is that combining interactivity and storytelling. And Brothers is actually one of the good examples with that. When you combine, like, it's almost like the way the characters' growth is through interactivity, through gaming. I don't know if you finished the whole game, but especially in the ending, without spoiling, there is a moment where you literally grow as a character in an interactive moment. That is what I love about gaming. And I mean, we're going to talk more about this, but a lot of people ask me about my background in movies, how it helped in the video games. For me, there are 2 entirely different interactive media. One is interactive, one is passive. But I think the main thing I've learned from movies into gaming is the pacing and variation and like keeping the player there. I mean, something that bothers me a lot is when people talk about replayability. I could talk about this forever, because I think it's a huge problem that we really need to speak of out loudly. And I think, again, going back to my background as a filmmaker, the best thing with that is that it has really helped me to understand that gaming is not close to movies. Gaming is its own thing. You have to learn how to write for it, how to tell a story for it, how to make a mechanic. They're so different. I mean, just writing, like sometimes people take in a scriptwriter for a movie and then try to write for a game. I mean, sure, it could work, but at the end of the day, you write differently. How you write a book, how you write a script is entirely differently. I imagine how to write for a game. So, and we're still trying to find it. I don't think we're really there. We have some really good examples today, but we're slowly learning more and more, on how to write stuff.
Well, it keeps changing too. I think that's the other thing that's fun about games is that the art evolves, and there isn't, I mean, at least in my opinion, there's no specific way to write for a game.
Yeah.
So it's difficult to take somebody from an art form that has been around for 100 years and has some pretty specific rules and say, okay, now learn to do it this way. But that way is changing. And we see examples every year of games that take it further. I think It Takes Two did a great job of combining narrative and design in a way that was really fresh and consistent throughout the game.
Yes.
I felt as a player, every time I entered a new challenge, it was really, really well integrated with what was going on between the two characters, right? What was that like for you?
I think that's one of the most important things that we push for a lot at Hazelight, combining the story and the gameplay. And I think it's very important because, you don't want to end up in a game where, I mean, you literally can hear someone say this, like, I'm playing to get the next cutscene. And I don't think it's fair to say for a game, because when you combine, I mean, in It Takes Two, we try as much as we can to, that every situation they meet, you're playing. Every scenario you're doing, it's part of the story. So if you meet a hammer and a nail, that you play that. If you see a couple of fidget spinners, you play with them. If you end up in a tree where you have a gang of squirrels that have some kind of a sap technology, you use that. So the whole idea of you're playing what you're seeing, it gives you more. It's almost like you're playing the story a little bit. And what we want is really combine those two. Even if we do it in a metaphorical way, we have scenes where, for instance, It Takes Two is about a couple and they have a problem with their attraction, and then we're playing with magnets. Like, okay, let's have that as a kind of an attraction for their in a metaphoric way. That way they play, and I love that we combine those as much as we can. And I want us to continue push that a lot, and because I think there's a huge amount of opportunity to actually use the mechanics as part of the storytelling, and that started already with Brothers, to use the mechanics to really like to be part of the story. There's also something that I kind of react to a lot. You hear this thing when someone says, "Well, as long as the game is fun." I don't absolutely believe that. I think actually, in a sense, it's dangerous to always say it should be fun. You hear this all the time. Like, people say, well, is this fun? That's the most important thing. No, it is one of the things. But I would say there's huge amount of different questions you should ask when you use a mechanic. Is it exciting enough? Does it fit the scene? Is there a purpose to this mechanic? What do we want with this mechanic? Does this mechanic, help with the story, and so on and so forth? And I think the important thing, because if you only ask fun, I mean, look, the opening is Last of Us isn't about fun. There's some scenes in Journey that's not about fun. The ending of Journey is not about fun. So why I say that is not just that games are not supposed to be fun. Yeah, sure, there are bits and pieces that should be fun. Some games in general needs to be fun all the way, and so on and so forth. And I'm sure even a game like Ratchet and Clank is not super important. It's always fun. There should be other stuff. But at the end of the day, the dangerous part with that, I think, is that if you take out the scene, I know we did some stuff both in Brothers or Way Out, It Takes Two, where someone said, oh, it's not fun. Then what, should we just take away that mechanic? Because no, I know it's not fun. It's not supposed to be fun here. This mechanic serves another purpose. You know what I mean? And I think it's important. And I do hear that if a designer comes to me and say that, or as long as it's fun, I say, thank you, goodbye, welcome at Hazelight. Here you have to fuck shit up and think differently. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, so again, going back to like, how do we find ways to, so the designers here now at Hazelight, they know when they talk to me, like, sometimes they forget. They're like, yeah, this scene feels like it's interesting. It's almost like this stuff. But I just think it's important. But don't get me wrong. I do believe games should be fun, but it's not always about that. I'm just trying to say what we're doing with combining. I just believe that there is a underestimation of what you could do with the mechanics to tell your story. I really do,
Well, I agree. I mean, I think it sounds to me. I think what you're talking about is engagement, right? You're engaging the players
Yeah,
throughout. You're making them care, and fun is an element of that.
yeah.
And something else you brought up just now. You brought up the hammer and the nail in It
Mm.
Takes Two, and I was actually, as I was playing, I was wondering if you were going deeper with the metaphor there, because you've got two characters who are different, and is there a reason that the female, the wife, picks up the hammer and the guy gets the nail? Is she? I mean, because she's the driver in the relationship. It seemed to me.
Yes.
Was that also? Are those the kind of things that
Yes.
you do as well? Okay.
Yes, for sure. So we obviously have a character background, who they are, how they function, and we try to give them mechanics that fits a little bit to their personality. It's a little bit in the background, doesn't have to be on your nose, but yes, for sure, there was a reason why May had a hammer and he had the nails, and
I really liked that. Yeah, it
yeah.
felt like it fit, and it was just
Mm.
another layer in a game that, to your point, has a lot of kind of fun, engaging mechanics, but it makes
Mm.
you think, right? That's what I really enjoyed about it.
And that's what we're gonna keep pushing. It's hard. I don't say we're there yet, and we're still gonna keep pushing. But that's the cool thing when you can combine those two. And but the problem with doing a game like It Takes Two is that it's funny, because I was talking to a friend of mine, and he said, like, because I hope, like, I inspire other developers as well. Because something that when I play games, I feel that they can become a bit repetitive, and that is something, because the old, like kind of a design rule, like teach the player mechanic, learn them, blah blah blah, all that. Like, I don't know, it's like I often feel that a game goes on a bit too long, to be honest. And it's interesting with It Takes Two. For the first time, I feel like people are really really understanding and loving the variety of gameplay we're doing. However, it is also dangerous. This, obviously, like, you can prototype a lot of stuff in very short time, but then you have to polish everything. That is like, I mean, you could do 10 mechanics a day if you want, but the problem is that you have to take them to a level where it's like, boom, but it's interesting. At the same day It Takes Two was released, Bala and Wonderworld, that game, which didn't get that of a great reception. They had, like, I think they were talking like having 80 different abilities. But it's interesting. Both It Takes Two and Bala Wonderworld came out the same day, and they're kind of doing the same thing. In a sense, both are platformer, and they're kind of like doing huge varieties of abilities and mechanics. But you see, one did it in a way where it's not polished, and the other one did it in a way where it's polished and feels nice and tight. So it's interesting. So the way we do games at Hazelight, it's I mean, people are loving it. It's very good pacingly, very extremely nice, but it's also very dangerous, because you need to take everything to that level. That was one of the biggest concerns we had in the team. Like, okay, how the hell do we take this up to that level? How do we make it, so it feels really nice and tight? Because, I mean, obviously in the beginning it did it.
Well, that is my core question for you, because in playing the game and just witnessing the variety of mechanics that you had, I wondered, how did you pull this off? And more specifically, did you kind of chart out how many mechanics you wanted to have, or did you just go for it and just try stuff and then keep what worked?
I think the good thing, I listened to the interview you did with David Cage the other day, and I actually met him once. We had a really nice discussion in Barcelona, and he said he has the good thing, because he is the CEO and the creative head, and I am in the same position, and I'm a kind of a very, I would say, persuasive person. When I say, like, okay, let's do this, I mean, nobody can say no to me. I'm like, okay, let's do this. Of course, the team can say, oh no, we can do this or not. It's not like I'm not illogical, if you know what I mean.
Sure.
But I think that right now the team knows that. I mean, we don't do vertical slice here. We don't believe in that. It's not possible vertical slice at Hazelight. We can't do it because we're so much variety. So the thing is, like, we have become. If you look at Brothers, A Way Out, and It Takes Two, they are, all three of them are very varied in their situation, what's going on. And I push on that a lot. So one thing, if you also look at those three games, I'm going to get to your question. I'm just going to explain how I look at it. They have no collectibles. They have like a separate pacing. They have almost like small stories in the game. They have a lot of interactivity of gaming. They have a playfulness, both like how you play with the world and mini games and stuff. And I think when we started Takes Two, people knew that was what we're going to do. So you had kind of an attitude, that was what we're going to do. However, we were very sure, like in the beginning, to try out mechanics that we felt like, okay, this feels nice, but also to know that, okay, can we take this to a level where we actually can polish it? Will we be able in time to do it? Otherwise, we would take it away. So we try to plan as much as we can, and then during, but we also have like this. We have like the hammer and nail, for instance, that I would say is a core mechanic for that level, and then you have something we now are call scenario mechanics, which is kind of a shorter mechanic you play for a while. They don't have to be as polished as the others, but just polished enough to feel nice and and tight, and then you can let them go. But it's important that you play them for a while and then you let them go. They should just function or work for 45 or 50 minutes, and that's we just push and like do our best to. But we don't have any like what do you say, like leveling up. We don't have any kind of like a different like ammo or stuff like that, so we can really like focus more on the mechanic itself than all the other stuff, because I mean you guys know, like balancing everything takes huge amount of time, and we don't have to do that. We can focus on the actual core mechanic and take that up, and I think that saves us a little bit of time. I mean, not a lot, but it takes away some time, obviously, so we can focus more on the mechanics.
Well, one of the things that we run into frequently is when we want to do variety, we tend to fall into the trap of one-offs, where it takes an immense amount of effort, say, to do a boss that has unique mechanics. And if we don't repeat it later, we feel like we're being inefficient.
No, Ted, I have to stop you here.
Well, exactly. No. Well, that's why I'm asking you.
Okay, well, let me say this.
To get around
let me say this. It's exactly what the designers tell me. Okay, let me give an example here. So if you look at it, that's again my background in the movie. If I have a great scene that I love, which is so cool, and it costs so much money, if you repeat that scene, you would destroy the scene. The whole point is that you only use it once. I mean, we have a scene in It Takes Two where they fight on a plane, like it becomes a 2D fighter all of a sudden.
Yeah.
That took us like 6 or 8 months for 2 minutes of gameplay. And a lot of designers asked me exactly that question about, okay, why are we putting so much time for that mode? Because that mode is and we're seeing it now when people are playing the game and streaming it. It's such a lovely moment for the gamers. And it's so worth those 8 months for that moment. But if we would repeat that, it's not about being efficient. Sorry, I mean, I have a big respect for you. It's about making that moment special. That's how you should look at it. Yeah, put 1 year on that moment, but it's an extremely special moment. And it gives the players a memory or a feeling that is impossible to create otherwise. So I would argue.
I'm not going to argue against that. I actually do. I think your analogy is great. You don't want to have a pivotal scene or something really special that you copy, right? Copy and paste, because then you're right. It totally takes away what makes that scene or that special moment unique. And what I was talking about were core mechanics, right? When you can find something that can be repeated so that it becomes a system, and then you can modify it so that it feels fresh when used again. That's what we tend to, I'm not arguing that what you're saying is wrong at all. I'm saying that we tend to look at that and push it as far as we can without feeling like we're repeating. Then again, I'll play devil's advocate for the 2D platforming moment. That is so cool, right? It's tempting to ask, well, if it was that cool, what if we could do more of it and make make it even cooler, and the players will like our game even more? And I totally see that trap, right? So no, I get it. So let me go back to how you.
But again, I think like just to get back to that question, that like if there is a production concern, obviously. I mean, look, at the end of the day, it's all about money as well. We need to think about production. We can't go on forever if you're not, I don't know, like a Valve or something that have the money.
Well, I think anybody. Let me just stop you there, because I think every single developer has constraints. It doesn't matter how big or how small you are.
But I mean, you can plan around that. Let's say, okay, we can do this. Let's put a couple of designs that does that and does that. If you plan around, you can get around it. You can still make it. That's I think. Yeah.
I
Yeah,
agree with
sorry,
you.
you were gonna ask.
Well, I want to talk about just the process that you use to get so much variety in so quickly. Where did you rely on sort of the built-in functionality of Unreal or the tool set, or did you do a lot of bespoke stuff to make your special, maybe your magnet challenge or the chess game or the ice race? Are those all specially programmed moments, or were you looking at some existing functionality, platforming functionality that just comes with Unreal?
Well, to be honest with you, I'm not the technical guy behind it. I just say, let's do this, and then we do it. But what I do know is that we create our own, that we call Haze Engine. We have our own system. We work in split screen. Obviously, we had to design our own tools and our own way. Something we put a lot of effort on that we almost failed at a way out, but we become way better at it now, is that you can play this online as well. And many people forget a lot of things in split screen. Not only are you rendering two screens, so you have to think about, and we are running pretty much 60 FPS on all consoles, which is kind of crazy. And we're still looking really, I mean, imagine Ratchet and Clank in a split screen, like you have to render everything. You have to render everything twice. So just that fact I am so impressed of our artists, what we did. And the online bit as well. I mean, obviously, when you have a split screen, you're playing online, you can see all the wackiness on the other side, depending on how laggy it is. So there's a lot of stuff we create our own. So I do know that we put a lot of time to creating our own tools and our own, almost like a program question. But for the technical, I wish I had my technical director to ask you, but we definitely did our own stuff. I just say like, okay, let's do this, let's do that, and let's do this. But I mean,
well, that's great.
Yes, we did a lot of our own stuff, and now we just like started to dive in Unreal Engine 5 with the next project right now, which I'm super excited for. And suddenly, like, I hear the coder say, well, we have to restart again and doing everything from the beginning. I'm like, come on, why do we? It's like, come on, you guys gonna rebuild everything again? It's like, yeah, that's how it works. I'm like, okay, whatever, just make it work, So it's like, it's crazy,
Do you think that is a natural tendency in our industry? Is when we're starting, say, a new game or a new mechanic, we just want to kind of wipe the slate clean and do it better next time?
There's something. It's always like that. It's interesting now when Unreal 5 is showcases these like super cool demos and stuff. And I mean, I know now when I look at those demos, I'm like, yeah, it's just a demo. It's probably 10 years away. But when you actually talk to a developer about this, they're like, yeah, but this and that and blah, blah, blah. And then you're like, okay, I don't even look at those videos anymore because they don't mean anything to me. For probably like a casual gamer, they think like, oh, it looks super cool. But obviously it's way more complex than that. But yes, for sure, I do feel like every time now we're recreating or redoing our engine a little bit. And we literally have to start from not from the beginning, but we really have to like, start over in a sense again with Unreal 5 and making everything work in that. And we're actually talking to Unreal. We have a good connection with them because we are one of the few studios working with split screen, and they really want to push for that as well. And when they really want to push that even further for the next game,
Well, that is, I mean, you bring up a great point about split screen. It is so, at least in my opinion, unusual today to see couch co-op or split screen co-op. It's wonderful. And I mean, going all the way back to the beginning, was that a conscious decision you made that you wanted to make games that are just always going to be two players?
For sure. Yes, for sure. I mean, Brother is not a split screen, but all three of them it's a two-play game. The first game was a two-play game for a single-play experience in a sense because you're controlling two. But yes, A Way Out from was day one. The whole idea was that you were two characters, that co-op, and then I'm not going to spoil it, but it was split screen from the beginning. Obviously, there was a lot of questions like, will this work with co-op only? Is there really a market? But I mean, A Way Out has till today, I think, sold almost 4 million units. I mean, sure, it's not big numbers, but it's still like huge numbers for a small game like that. So there's definitely is people who want to play this kind of game for sure. But there was a lot of skeptical voice in the beginning. But for me, it was always important. And the thing with that is that's how we design our games. It's not just split screen. It's also it's important with the communication in the couch, that you see the other screen, what is going on. We can't go full screen, because when you see when people play It Takes Two and A Way Out, they're talking, okay, do this, do that. What if you do that? You did it. It's part of the design. It's part of the communication. You take that away. You take away the actual, then you have to design the game differently. So some people say, like, why don't you do full screen? No, that's not how it's supposed to be experienced. You are supposed to see what the other player is doing, see the other player's mechanic, and so on and so forth. So that was for sure from day one. There was no doubt that it would be that. But it was super challenging, especially on the way out. We didn't have so much money, and I worked my ass off. Oh my God, man! It was a true, like, garage development, but for some weird way we did it.
Well, that's kind of, I know, I can totally commiserate, because that's the way we started too. And
you did? How many years ago? Like
that was 27 years ago, but it
holy
was,
shit,
maybe more. But it's the same thing, where you've got just a few of you who have a vision for what it is that you want to deliver, and you do anything, right? Literally anything to get the game out the door.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there was a lot of sleepless night. There was a lot of hard work, but also a lot of fun. It's almost, sometimes when you look back at it, it's almost like you look back at old relationships. You only remember the good things. You forget the bad things. You're like, oh, it's so good. Like, no. I'm not going to get back to my ex. There was a lot of bad stuff, but you tend to always remember the good stuff. It's weird how people function. But that's how I look at it.
So true. That is real. What a great statement. Yeah. And the funny thing is, I know that personally, I can use that as a poor justification for, say, decisions. I can look back and say, oh, we used to do it like this, and it was so much better back then. And then somebody who has a much better memory than I have will go, no, you're wrong. It was terrible.
You remember only the good stuff, but that's good. I mean, it's good that you have great. Then there's a point with working. I mean, I did all the mocap and A Way Out, and it was madness. We were so tired, literally, like carrying all the, we took the cameras from DICE, because we were sitting in the offices of DICE, and they were obviously super big AAA studio, and we borrowed their OptiTrack cameras and rented like a small area. And every time we put them up and put them down for every shooting, and it was crazy. But again, I only remember the good moments. But another analogy also, like talking about like relationships, games are like that. For me, It Takes Two is done. I don't think about it anymore. That is over. So I have a new relationship now. I nurture that. I'm with that, and I feel in love with that. It's almost like now this is my new relationship, and I totally focus on that. So it feels a bit weird to talk about It Takes Two now, all of a sudden,
Yeah, I, again, completely get it. And it's funny because I'm sure you went out and did a lot of PR for Take Two, right? And after the game was done, you were already prototyping the next game. Your head was in a completely different place. Is that difficult for you to sort of shift gears back and forth?
Yeah, especially because we had we went gold. I don't remember exactly, like around February, January, and then I didn't have so much. There was a lot of with the PR and stuff, with the game, and kind of feedback and trying to put together what the next game is. But yes, I do felt it a little bit. But after the release, a couple of weeks after the release, I felt like, okay, it's done. So the stuff that when people want to interview about It Takes Two, I try to say no now, because I want to focus on the next one only. But yes, for me, talking about It Takes Two is not that interesting. I want to talk about the next game, but it's hard to talk about. I just can't wait to show the people, because I think everybody will be super surprised. They will be like, holy shit, they really fuck with our minds again. I'm so looking forward for you guys to see it, actually.
Well, let's talk about that. I mean, not your game. I don't want to talk. I don't want to ask you to reveal anything, but I want to talk about the shroud of secrecy that most developers have around their games, Insomniac included, right?
Yeah,
we don't talk about it because we want to keep our powder dry and make big, exciting announcements for people. But then there's some other developers who have completely open developments, right, from the very beginning, and they share everything. What is your philosophy on that?
I think for me, it's quite important that when you have a strong idea or vision in the beginning, you should be very careful who you share it with. I think because the idea is, if you share it to the wrong, because an idea in the beginning is so vulnerable. So if you share it to the wrong person, what do you call it? in the subconsciously,
Hmm.
you will still take in the reaction of other person. It's almost like telling a joke that's not done, and if that person is not laughing, you're like, okay, there's something wrong with the idea. So I'm very careful who I tell first what next game is, because you tell it to the wrong person, you might not nurture the idea. So that's one of the reasons I think you should be very careful in the beginning, not talking to everybody, just like starting slowly with people you trust, like, what do you think, so they understand. And then when the ideas become stronger, more mature, really like have strong legs, then you can start talking and showing people, okay, this is what we're going to do, so they understand more. So one should be very careful in the beginning. I think the games that function to have very early open development early is the games that are more on dependent on feedback and what the gamers think and what the gamers want. And from that perspective, it's good. If you're doing a game based on like a specific mechanic or something, a feedback that you want from the player, then it's fine. But the philosophy here at Hazelight is that we create games that that we want the players to understand what we are doing, not adapting it to the players. You know what I mean? So when we do our UXR testing, which is, I think, super important. So if someone says, I don't like this part, we don't say, we're going to take it away. No, we say, okay, what do we do to make that person understand what we want here? So that's a different philosophy for us here. And it's very important. So I think that's another reason why it's important not to talk about your game if you tend to think of the games that way. And also because they're not... and also, if you want to talk to other developers like about this, you should have a developer that understand what you're doing. Like that does. Maybe we should have had a talk with you guys, for instance, because you do like a platformer, action adventure stuff. That would be super cool. But I don't know. In a sense, maybe we would have a clash because maybe we have a different perspective on what design is, or maybe we would like have a meeting like, okay, what about this? And it would be really cool, like if we had a meeting like during It Takes Two and like show you stuff. Okay, what about this? And that we do this. And what do you do? And and we could have because we're at Hazelight right now, every Friday we have this thing because we have so many different mechanics. So we had this thing where on Friday we have kind of a short where it's like a kind of a disco design, we call it, that the designers like try to come up with different ideas on the other's mechanic. You know what I mean? It could be cool to like switch and turn around. Like, okay, what about this? Because we are in a sense doing many different games in one, so we can do that. So I think it could work to have an open way like that. But on the other hand, you want to like really finish it and build it before you release it. But that's, I think, one of the ideas for us. I don't think there's any point, especially also with the story, with single player games. I think you've seen some do that, but in general, if you tend to have an early screening on the game and how, I think it kind of like destroys the experience in a sense. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm aligned with you on that too. It's nice to be able to hold things back so that when you release your first material, you're stating something that you feel strongly about, right? It's not malleable. It's actually it's this is our point of view. This is the game. We hope you're excited about it. It would just that's also risky too, because what happens if people don't like it?
Well, you don't have to worry when you showed Ratchet and Clay. You kind of like shocked the world in a sense. Well, not only from a graphical fidelity, like the way it looks, it feels so much nicer to play, and in that sense also much more fun to play. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Well, thanks.
Especially after Spider-Man. Like I told you before we started the interview, Spider-Man was for me easy that year. The best game of that year. And yes, I do know that God of War came the same year. It was the second best for me. But for me, the first one was Spider-Man. It took me around, I would say, 10 hours to really get my head around the combat, because I was a big fan of, the Arkham Knight games. And they're a very different system, but they're in a sense kind of inspired from each other. But at the end, after 10 hours, I really felt that fluidity with the combat. Just a quick question, because I'm not the one that's going to ask you questions, but how long during production did you feel like, okay, now we got it? Was it early or was it late?
There were two got it moments, really, or three for the game. One was when we figured out how swinging should feel.
Oh, yes.
And that was one of the earliest. And one of our lead gameplay programmers, Doug Sheehan, figured it out. and that was so important with help from the animators, and it was a collaborative process, and that was a light bulb moment, right? Once it felt good to swing. The second moment was figuring out what made an interesting mission and what made a fun mission, and I think we stumbled frequently on that.
You know, something that you did very interesting that not so many are talking about in Spider-Man. I actually 100%ed it. And that's very rare for an open world, because you could call it open world even if it's not the world is too big, which I'm a big fan of. But it's interesting, the side content you guys had, both that you had, you know, I'm not even a fan of collectibles, but the collectibles you guys had, no, I'm not, but there was kind of a personal stuff to them. There was like a personal thing to the story where he collected different stuff, and you talked about his relationship, you know, and also the side missions. There's a lot of variation to them. So I actually finished everything, and it's very rare I 100% games, and I hope more games. And I don't know about the finish rate of Spider-Man. Do you have in mind what statistic it was?
I think it is, oh my goodness, around 60 maybe. And I saw you say that may be high, but I recall seeing that number. I also recall seeing that number, you mentioning that number, because you have a high finish rate for your games, don't you?
That is something that I talk about a lot. I think it's so important that people finish the games. And one of the things when I finished the Spider-Man is that I feel that I wish more games were like this, where you actually, because I didn't feel that Spider-Man went for too long. I just felt, okay, this is a perfect length. It's enough. There's a lot of variation. It feels nice. It feels tight. Yeah. But I do feel like many games goes on a little bit too long, to be honest. And I think there's a problem with that, because you tend still hear about replayability. I don't understand what it's all about. We have such a huge problem. It's almost like a mass psychosis. People are not even finishing our games. I mean, imagine all the work put in to create those games, and people are not even finishing. I mean, one example.
Let's dive into that a little bit. I want to just make a disclaimer for anybody who's listening. I have no idea what our finish rate is on Spider-Man. So I'm guessing, I think I saw 60%. I'm thinking 60% because I think I may have seen that for one of your games.
It's not impossible. A Way Out had 51% of finish rate.
Okay.
Which people told me, like, wow. Yeah. And that is crazy that you say great. I understand why. It's a great number.
That's right. And I totally agree with you. The amount of content that we all put into these games that just doesn't get seen by the majority of players.
Yes.
But here's the thing, you know, in life, how many people finish anything, right? If you look at going through the school system, or watching a TV series, or reading a book, a lot of people literally don't finish things, or having a project.
Yes, but you definitely, I mean, how often do you not finish a movie? Sure, it happens, but it's not often. I can guarantee you statistically, it's not even close to gaming. And it's not often that you don't finish. I mean,
well, okay. But you're making a 2-hour or hour and a half investment in a movie, and you've probably you've had somebody tell you that it was a good movie. So you're already going in with this intent, right? A game that is, let's say, 15 hours long. Right, you're going in. That's 7 times as long as the movie, and even if and games are, as you've proved, much more varied. Right, there's not. It's your expectations change throughout the game. If it is a, I think, well-crafted game. So I think it's a little more difficult to make that comparison.
I mean, sure. Fair argument. Let's say not everybody's finishing anything. I'm not sure about that, but because I'm for me, if I hear that 51% finished the movie I did and the 49% went out of the theater, I would go like, "Are you fucking kidding me?" And I was like, "That is madness." But the thing is, let's say people don't finish stuff, but the problem is that we are focusing on replayability. Everybody's talking about journalists, developers, publishers, and so on and so forth. So when we focus on that, then we focus on the right things. So not only do we have a problem that people are not finishing our games, we're focusing on replayability. So we're putting a lot of extra work. We're making them longer, putting in a lot of content just to replay. In the actual fact, nobody is, I mean, there's so few people replaying our games. So I would say for me, like, the full focus is actually to make people to finish the games. And the problem is that everybody talks about it. Like when people review the games, or if you talk about them, like the replayability, who cares about replayability? We have a problem that people are not finishing it.
Well, let's talk about why people don't finish? I mean, what is, in your opinion, what are some, like maybe the 3 top reasons people
You
don't
get
finish
tired. I think one of the reasons is you get tired. I think the other reason is that there's an attitude today that a game needs to be has to have a certain kind of length to have worth for your money. I have no clue in that, because for me, like, I don't understand how people value their time. Like, shouldn't, like, for me, it's so obvious that quality should go before quantity. You know, it's so weird that you have a lot of repetitiveness in game. It goes on for, I don't want something going on for 40 hours. I want something that goes on at less. I mean, okay, I'm gonna do another analogy. When you have, you know, a great time with your wife, it's not about how long, you know, it's like how good it is, you know what I mean? It's like, come on, man. It should be the quality, not the time, you know what I mean? Come on. But anyway, so that's one of them, and I think they go on for too long. And also, the gamers have matured. Like you and me, we don't have the same time to sit and play 40, 50 hours. We want to play different experiences. We can't. We don't. It's rarely that we finish game. I mean, I try as much as I can. So the audience has changed a little bit.
Well, wait, hang on a second. But we've changed, right? We've gotten older. We have families. We have other obligations. You're running a company, right? You're making games. So it's difficult to spend 20 hours in a weekend playing games.
Yes.
But then there are folks who are not in that situation, right? I'm sure. I know you have a young child, right?
Yeah.
And my kids are a little bit older, and I watch the amount of time that if I let them, the amount of time they'll play, because they don't have jobs. They would play for 8 hours straight a day if I let them. So but it's still, I can guarantee you the statistics still are what they are. It's still that people are not finishing the game, are not playing them. So let's take a game like Witcher 3 that sold, I think, around 25 million units. Right. I think 30% finished that game. That means that, or 25, let's see, blah, 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 so it's 7.5. So 17.5 million players didn't finish the game. Is that fair? Is that not? Even CD Projekt went out and said that they want to make their campaign shorter because not so many people finished it. And I think it's sad. There's so much, and yes, let's say that people don't finish stuff, but here we're focusing and we're judging a game on how long it is and how replayable it is and so on and so forth. And from that case, then don't judge it like that. If everybody should accept the fact that we don't finish stuff, then don't design and judge it like that. Because the problem is when it makes you put in so much work in and so much crunch, like we're doing that, so much stuff for nothing, because nobody's caring about it. Why do you think then it's become a thing with reviewers and bloggers and others who are commenting on games?
Well, I think it's because nobody has talked against it. Every journalist I talk to, like I say to them sometimes, like stop talking about replayability. Don't write it in. And some of them actually promised me, like, okay, I'm not going to speak about it anymore, because we should just stop talking about it. We should change our attitude on how we look at it. We shouldn't. I mean, I'm not against replayability. I think actually the opposite. If you have a really tight game that feels really nice and crisp and like that, and that it's as long as it needs to be. With that means it could be 3 or 15 hours. I'm not a fan of short or long game. I'm a fan of games that are as long as they need to be. Not just long for the sake of it. I think if you had that, then you would have more replayability, natural replayability, where you actually play the game again because you feel like it feels so nice. But now, if you want to replay something, you're like, this game goes a little bit too long. I won't do it. You know what I mean? And I think it's coming from our old way. Before games were shorter. So before, when you bought a game like on Nintendo or Super Nintendo or like those old systems, you paid like $50 or $60 at that time, the same price as today. And they went on for 3 or sometimes 2 hours. Then replayability was way more important because you replayed them. I mean, how many times haven't we played Super Mario Bros. 1, for instance? I mean, you know what I mean? So I think it's from that time. It's followed us through here.
I guess, and I'm not, what may have changed, and you can correct me on this, is that games aren't necessarily getting penalized for not having big replayability. I'll give just 2 examples. One is It Takes Two. Right? You guys got awesome scores. I mean, deservedly for the game. And another one is Last of Us 2, right?
Mm.
no real reason to play through that twice. You can, but it's not, the mechanics aren't set up to encourage you to replay it. You're not unlocking a whole lot of new, different stuff.
Mm.
And both of those games scored extremely high Metacritic wise.
Mm.
So I feel like some people may look at it as sort of the icing, right? Or maybe it's just certain styles of games. I feel like reviewers are sophisticated today, and they can recognize that this type of game, a story-driven game, like It Takes Two, with lots of mechanics that support the story, doesn't need to be replayed. I'm just saying that from my outside perspective, because
sure. I mean, good stuff is happening for sure, and it is having an effect. Hopefully, because I'm to keep talking about it, that they don't take it up. But I would still argue that replaying It Takes Two is actually, in a sense, because if you change the characters, you get different mechanics. You kind of, in a sense, play a different game. So you can't play. But what I'm saying is that it's still being taken up, that about what the replayability is, what the length of the game is. It's still part of like the question you get from the publisher or the players, like how is the replay? All these stuff that I think just need to disappear, especially for the story based games. I mean,
it's kind
obviously.
of it's a check. It's sort of a box that needs to be filled in when you're describing a game. So what's this? What's that? What's replayability?
It's again like, is this fun? Blah blah. It's all these questions that we try to question here, and this is one of them, the replayability, which I think is sad. And I think still today that we have a huge problem that people are not finishing our games, and I think it's sad because there's so much. I think we should, and I think we can make more people. Finish our games if we make our game. I think pacing is one of the things we could become better at to make people finish our games. Actually,
I agree. I think all of us. I mean, every developer has that challenge, right? Getting that pacing perfect throughout the game, so that the player is gently led through and is excited about the next thing without getting fatigued. Yeah, I totally agree. And we struggle with that too. Do you? When you talk about pacing, when you're designing your games, do you chart out the highs and the lows? I mean, how do you guys tackle that as you're putting together the game?
So right now, for instance, we have like let's say we have for the moment we've chosen different mechanics that we know we're gonna have. I'm not gonna go into much details. And then when we I would say we started this around March, and then we're working on the mechanics, and we feel like, okay, now we have something we feel really nice for. And then in August somewhere, we start building the level. Now, with those mechanics, we start seeing, like, okay, what can we do to all the time keep you invested in what's going on with the mechanic, not only redo what you're doing. And then you start to adapt. Okay, here we do this. Here this it's too slow. Here, let's go up with that. Let's do this. It's kind of a natural process when you start building it, and you kind of like it's what do you say? I mean, iterative, or what do you say? Like iterate all the time, to find this perfect pacing, and then we do our testing. That's the most important part when we say, and you can sense when the pacing is not working. But I think that's the most important thing that we do here when we start testing our pacing, is see the player reactions. Are they getting what we want? Are they invested in the game? Are they focused? Are they? It's interesting when we did It Takes Two, and you look how people play it. They are totally in the game, in the now all the time. You don't see them getting tired of it, or going back or thinking of something. They're all the time in the moment, and that's something we're looking for a lot, like that. But it's hard to say exactly this is what we do. We just go with the flow, as you say. Okay, this is too slow. We gotta have something here, and we gotta go crazy here. Let's do something nuts. Let's do something different. I always tell the designers, throw your first, second, third ideas. Go for the fourth one, because the first ideas are normally the stuff you've seen or done before, or stuff like that. I think I'm very good at bringing out the creative monster in people. I can really push people. Come on, no, we got to do this, do that. I push in a good way, and I think people surprise themselves on how much creativity they have in them.
So how do you do that? Push people to be more daring, take more risks creatively without upsetting folks. What's your technique?
Oh, I wish I could give you an example, because I had just a moment like that with a designer. So we had one designer working with something, and he showed me like a kind of a set piece or a puzzle moment, and I told him like, look, when I look at this now, I feel like I've played this so many times. Okay, let's look at the same situation, but twist it a little bit. And then I gave him an idea on how to look at that. It did exactly the same thing, but with a visual and with a visual difference, and that is enough. If sometimes with change that, then suddenly it's a new crazy moment. And I think like like a planting almost these creative seeds and how to think and how to look at stuff. And then suddenly like they surprise themselves, I think, of what happens. I wish I could give you this example because it's such a good example of how to look at things. But for me and for us, I always say, let's try to see what we can do that haven't been done before. And in a sense, it's quite easy today in the industry to do something new. In 50 years, it's going to be super hard. I think yeah, it is. Because if you look at movies, I mean, the latest movie that did something like, revolutionary, I would say it's Tarantino, Pulp Fiction. That was 94. After that, it's been like, I mean, not that you can't make such a unique movie anymore. You can make some movies that are great, but not something that sticks out, because movies has been going on for so long. But in gaming, now is the chance. Now is actually the easy time to make something that really sticks out. In 50 years, it's going to be hard.
Okay, so I am going to challenge that because
I love that.
What I don't think we can anticipate is what happens with gaming platforms, right? If you look at what happened when mobile was introduced, and then when VR was introduced, and I mean, AR hasn't even really hit yet, there are many different ways that we present games as a medium to players. And every time we change it up, it seems to me at least that we discover new mechanics and new ways to deliver gameplay.
I'm not a fan of the mobile industry. I know a lot of people are talking about that, but I'm not a fan at all.
Well, this is not me endorsing mobile games.
No. Yeah,
as an example of a different sort of gaming paradigm that inspired a whole bunch of new ideas. I think some of which have bled over into consoles. I mean, you look at the success of Fortnite, right? Mobile games, free to play, that did not exist on consoles or PC, not really, until it became huge in mobile, and then the rest of us started sort of co-opting those ideas, and they evolved into something completely different, but inspired in a good way.
Yeah, but that's more of a business model. I'm talking about creating something totally new. I mean, the free to play, it's more of a business model. It's more of getting people to start playing, and then like I mean, it's pretty much finding a different way for you to start playing or pay for the game, which I can understand when you have big budgets. But
and I'm, again, not endorsing, but I think they inform the mechanics though in the game too. So, right? I mean, everything. If you're making not to go off on this tangent,
but I mean, let's take Fortnite as an example. I mean, it is what it is. It would be the same game. It was a free to play or a paying game. It was a paying game in the beginning, and then they did the battle royale thing. So for me, what I'm trying to say is that. From a perspective, what we can do mechanically, especially from the story perspective of games, I think that there is a lot to be discovered there as well. I mean, sure, you do have, of course, I believe strongly in AR especially, and VR I love as well. And you do have stuff that could inspire us, and there's a lot of stuff going on. And I just hope it doesn't, affect creativity from another aspect, because sometimes I really do hope that, because I'm carefully optimistic right now about Game Pass, for instance. Like I'm like, okay, what is it going to mean to have a Netflix model for gaming? I'm not sure about it yet, but I'm hearing stuff. I read something that I didn't really was a big fan of, when there were like a talk of like, okay, you see that 30% more people are doing in-game purchases and stuff like that. Look, I do have an understanding that we need to find ways of like people paying for games. I have understand that games are big budgets, but as long as it doesn't affect creativity, as long as it doesn't affect the design on how we look at games, that's the only part that scares me a little bit. And that's why I'm a little bit skeptical when to mobile gaming, because it tends to show some really great numbers, but also tends to, in general, of course you do have good games, in general it tends to have some quite boring games, you know what I mean? And that is what scares me, only from a creative aspect. Now
I'm with you. I think people tend to vote. People tend to vote with their time and their dollars, right?
Yeah.
And so the good games, it doesn't matter what platform you're on, mobile, console, PC, VR, people flock to the games that they find the most satisfying, the most engaging. And everybody's got different tastes. But I feel like quality I agree with you. Quality wins generally, especially in our side of the industry. So.
Yeah, but if you introduce it's almost like the people who play mobile games, sometimes it's almost like they're eating food that is like shit, and you tell them like, there's a great food here, why don't you eat this? I think if you give them that, they will be like, wow, I didn't know this existed. But they are sometimes afraid because sometimes the AAA titles or the games are very, very complex, and they could scare some people.
I totally agree, but I also think there's a time for everything. Like I'm a huge fan of super AAA story-driven games, but at the same time, I will play quick word games via text with my son when we're having lunch in a restaurant, right? And I get a ton of enjoyment from that too. So, and the irony is that the people who make those games are probably making just as much money as the people who make or more.
Yeah, sure. I mean, playing with your son like that, I mean, sure. But I just think that that they don't know what they're missing. It's just that, it's like, come on, man, there's so much great games out there and you're just playing this.
Well, there's crossover. I also think that too, I'm just, again, not to be the eternal optimist here, but I feel like one of the great things about mobile, because this is a good kind of argument to have, is that it opened the door for a lot of folks to discover more in the gaming sphere, because mobile in general was so accessible and still is so accessible. And it's sort of like, I mean, the way I look at it is can be an on-ramp for more sophisticated story-driven games and drive more console sales, drive more GPU sales, and obviously more success for the games that we make, which is, you and I. So
yes, hopefully, yes, but that's not how it looks like today, I feel a little bit, because we see some huge numbers on mobile, and suddenly you see publishers leaning more and more towards that, because eventually big corporate companies, that's the negative side of a capitalist world, that you need to grow all the time. At the end of the day, you will follow where the growth is, in a sense. So that is also what scares me a little bit. But I mean,
what's happening though, the console industry is growing. I mean, that's what is great. It's not that.
But is it because of mobile?
It's hard to say, right?
Yeah,
I have a feeling that what's important is that the audience of gamers is growing, right?
Yeah.
Gamers, the number of gamers in general gets bigger, and so that means the percentage of the human population playing games continues to increase, and that's good for everybody.
Yeah, but for me, it's almost like okay, let me give you an analogy again. It's almost like people are seeing, I don't know, homemade shitty movies. I don't know that. And then I tell them like, look, I have the Godfather trilogy here. Don't you want to see it? You know what I mean? And when they see it, they're like, wow, why didn't anybody tell me this? This is a little bit how I see it. But again, look, I think it's super good with your argument here. And again, at the end of the day, like I say, the only thing that I'm a bit skeptical that scares me, everything should be there, mobile, whatever, as long as it doesn't, in a sense, affect the creativity we're doing with the console gaming. I think that's super important, what's going on there. So that's what's scary. So when I see, that's what I said about the game, but when I see like stuff being like looking at how the mobile is and you start to take it in the console, that scares me a little bit, just from a creative perspective. So I just hope that the games there keeps on being these fantastic games. You know what I mean? That's the only thing.
I totally get it. And I think that what you've done with Hazelight is you've brought together a group of people who are passionate about making a specific type of game, right?
Yeah.
And setting a standard in the industry, which is fantastic because you have a big fan following. You have a lot of people, including me, who are excited to see an extremely well-crafted co-op game exist, and one that is clearly crafted with love, right? I mean, you said it yourself. I think I read you said it was a love letter to gamers.
Oh yeah, for sure, yeah. I mean, that's what we're going to continue doing as well. I mean, it's cool because we're really growing now. I mean, people really know about us and they know what we do, and we have, as you say, like created this. I mean, we are getting fans that really want to play our games, and I hope we also inspire other developers to do similar games. Because co-op only games, for sure, there is. I mean, people want to play them. We are clearly seeing it. I mean, we're looking at the sales number and how it's looking, and I hope more people do like that. But again, I also hope that pacing and variation inspires other developers as well.
Well, I think it challenges other developers for sure. I when I played It Takes Two, I walked away thinking, "Wow, how." I said this before. How did you do it? And it's inspiring because it makes me think, well, how can we do it better, right? How can we approach that same just insane variety without breaking the bank or killing everybody?
Take me into Insomniac and I'll show you how.
Well, when you're in LA, come by.
Let me see. I wonder like how a guy like me would be at your. How do you work there at Insomniac? You know.
I think you fit right in. Everybody is loves what they do, right? Everybody's passionate about the craft.
Oh, cool.
And to your point earlier, we love discussing, the pros and cons of any mechanic. Like we will go deep on mechanics and just analyze it until we have to stop analyzing it. Yeah. And that's the fun, and putting it into practice and seeing what works and what doesn't work. That's why we make games. That's why all of us
for sure.
It's that excitement of discovery. When that light bulb goes off and you see something working and you go, yes, together. Right?
But you seem very involved in the creative process. Have you always been like that? I mean, obviously you're a huge gamer. I mean, yourself,
Yeah, well, as you and I talked about, we were also a garage developer very early, and so those of us who were on at Insomniac in the very first days, we all wore a lot of hats, and so I was involved. I was building levels, making the art, helping with design, you name it. As was everybody else at Insomniac at the time, and so over the years, as we grew, I had to take a step back from making stuff because there are people who are much more talented than I am, but I could still offer advice and my thoughts on design and story, and it's fun.
Oh yeah, cool. Yeah, for sure. 400 people, that's a lot.
Well, let me ask, one thing I really wanted to ask you and I didn't get a chance, but I'm going to, is how do you manage to balance running your company and doing all that you do? And it's a question I asked David Cage as well, because you both you mentioned this, you're similar in your approach. You do a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Well, again, like you make sure you surround yourself with the right people that can help you. So I have a studio manager here that is super, and we have 2 producers.
Okay.
One of them is actually have he worked in movies before. It works super good. Just surround yourself with the right people. And I think like it's funny because we almost did no crunch in It Takes Two. A little bit in the end, but not crazy at all. Like here and there, the plan worked out quite well. And I'm looking at the new plan right now. It's looking really good. It's all about having the right people around you, and not really. I'm just involved in some decisions. Look, here's the thing with me. Like, I'm not the finance guy. I don't even understand money. I have a guy that helped me with this, and okay, obviously we've been doing well, so I don't know this. It's like, okay, this is this. I hardly even can write my own email. I sound stupid, but not like that. But it's almost like I make sure to surround me with people so I can focus only on the creative stuff, But when something is not working, then I make sure I take in someone that helps out with that. But I'm very good at pushing the team and inspire the team. I think that's my biggest key thing. But I don't think I'm your typical CEO. I can't sit in a meeting and have okay, we'll do this and that. No, it's not my thing. I always laugh and joke around. Like sometimes we have bank people coming in having a meeting. They're like, who is this crazy guy talking like this? It's just that I don't have it in me. For me, I just want to have fun, and talk about passion and And this is what you see. This is me, in a meeting, whatever meeting it is. If it's with the EA top bosses or whatever it is, it's the same thing pretty much. That goes again, for the collaboration with EA. That's another thing. It's actually been super good. Nobody believes that because they get so much shit, for some reason. I don't know why, but for me, I don't have a problem at all. We work super good. They don't have anything to do with the game. They don't interfere with anything, pretty much. I guess the same with Sony with you guys. Is it?
We have a really collaborative relationship with Sony. I mean, I'm not trying to negate what you're saying at all. We've worked with Sony for 25 years.
Oh, shit.
And so we've, and we've worked with EA, and we've worked with Microsoft, and we've worked with other companies too. But we've actually worked with the same people at Sony for 25 years.
Oh, wow.
Which is another just remarkable thing. And you don't see that happening often in the industry. So it's those personal relationships that we have that have really been great. It's a mutual trust. We have no problem. They have no problem telling us what they think. Honestly, we have no problem telling.
Yeah.
So
I think that's to be honest with you, why I like Sony as a publisher is they are the ones that dare to put money on new ideas and new IPs. Yep. And I hope that continues, like Horizon or Days Gone, or just like letting a studio like you, okay, why don't you do open world Spider-Man all of a sudden? It's in a sense, it's kind of like it's kind of a risk, because because it's totally opposite of what you've done before. Like, okay, here you go, do this, and that is cool. Like God of War, one of the biggest IPs in the world. Like, you know what? I think it was Corey that said, okay, we're going to go this way. And they're like, okay, do it. I think I'm sure it was way more complex than that, but I still think that heads up, it's cool for Sony to say, okay, let's do it. Let's fucking do it. I mean, that's the way I look at it.
Well, you're exactly right. Sony has trust in creativity.
Yes.
And in teams that have a passion for what they do. And they say, just like what you said, hey, if you have an idea, try it. Great.
Yeah.
And Sony has created a reputation for delivering unexpected new IP, which is, you're right, it's hugely risky.
Yes.
But what's awesome is that it's that sort of that magic chemistry between the developers and the folks within Sony that actually works very consistently. But I think it is all based on trust.
Yeah, for sure. But also another thing is that you had like Guerrilla Games doing a first-person shooter. Then like, we're going to do a third-person open world. Like, okay, do it. Total new IP. And then they make this. I love that game. I think it's one of the most underestimated open worlds. I know they've got great reviews and great sales, but still their enemy design and combat is fantastic. I'm really looking forward to that. But that's, again, another risk, that is
Well, you do it too. I mean, I think that's what's awesome about being in this business in general, right? We're always, all of us as creators are thinking about what could we do that's different? Like, what can we do that maybe builds on our strengths, right? But is that sort of that balance between doing something we're good at and then surprising player?
Yes,
right?
But to be honest, I mean, you do know there's the bad side of this, that you have a lot of games out there. I don't know exactly. I'm not going to say exactly who publisher it is. There are basing the games on calculation, expectations, numbers, statistic, what are player playing. And those are the stuff I feel like is sad, because those are the stuff we need to go against to create new experiences. And we are seeing when you create a really cool, unique IP, there's different. You can make something super big and commercial, but also very, very good. Those two can be combined. I say that to electronic arts a lot, like electronic and arts. They're both business and creativity. They have to combine. And that's the thing. We are, obviously there's a huge amount of money involved, but we're still making something. We're still making something creative. So those two have to be combined. We can't just say, well, we have to do this because otherwise we won't sell. We have to have also understand that we're making something creative, like something that needs to, talk with the players and feel fresh and unique and stuff like that. So,
well, I think what you just said is also key. You talk to the players, right? You're making something that's relatable to a pretty wide audience versus making something nichey that maybe there's less interest in. You've chosen. I mean, I'll just again go back to It Takes Two because it's so fresh in my mind. The relationship between the two main characters is totally relatable. And the situation, to me, seems totally relatable. And you parlay that into a game that has, incredible variety, but also is accessible, right? It's really easy to pick up and play. It doesn't put barriers in your way as a player. And so it's that magic like mix of relatability, accessibility, and variety that I think ends up making something that does have a wide audience and feels fresh at the same time.
Yes, yes, for sure. That's what you take up there is definitely the inspiration from Nintendo. Obviously, there have been a huge inspiration. Like, pick up and play, that thing. And that's I mean, that's the thing. We really, I'm really proud of what we put together. That people are immediately getting it. So that is something that we really push on a lot. I mean, in our games, you will never see a menu or upgrade or like numbers and stuff because. I don't know. It's not going to be there. It's always going to be very simplistic and nice and clean because it fits what we do. It's a really like a narrative, interactive experience, and with the interactive, I mean like with a lot of gaminess to it. I mean? So yeah.
Well, it's so awesome that you have it. You've made that decision about the kind of games you're passionate about as a company, right? And
yes.
Everybody in the company is into that. That's a battle that maybe a lot of developers never win. Like I know because you're shifting around to try to figure out what really works, and you guys have landed on it and figured it out.
Yes, but I do still hope that other publishers dare to take more risk. To be honest, I mean, it's not only Sony, but I would argue and hope that every publisher, as the Ubisoft, Activision, EA, everybody push even more to dare take bigger risk to make these great games. And if the console market is growing, because of mobile, I don't think it's because of mobile, but whatever it is, we need to make more great games, and I hope more publishers dare to do that. And because not all developers have, I mean, in a sense, like my personality is kind of strong, and I can convince people. I'm like, no, we do this, we do that, let's do it. Like I have a confidence in me that I can create, but not all passionate people have the same confidence outwards. They are super good, but they don't have my personality, and then they can easily be. There can be someone coming and like, no, this is not going to sell, blah, blah, blah. There's going to this. Imagine how many great stuff that was turned down because of someone said like, no, this is not going to work. You need to have someone. I mean, if you don't have someone like me saying like, no, this will work. Trust me, let's do it. Boom. I mean, but people are not like that. And I hope those ideas don't die out. And I just hope like more risk are taken.
I feel optimistic about this because our industry is now hiring people who have been gamers from birth, right? Which wasn't the case 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, even though you grew up playing Atari, I grew up playing Atari, and we've been gamers from birth, that wasn't necessarily the standard for our generations.
Yes.
And I think now it may be. And that's what's cool is you're seeing hardcore gamers throughout, all levels of a publisher in finance, in HR, of course, in production, which is great. I've seen sort of a change in attitude about how creativity is supported. And I'll go back to Sony, and I'll say that's one of the reasons that Sony has done so well and does support creativity, because you have hardcore gamers throughout, which is exciting. And I think the same probably is true for other publishers. I don't know. You would know better than I.
No. Man, you have. I mean, you have so much knowledge in gaming. It's interesting. Like whatever I say, you kind of like have a perspective to it. I really like it. It's really nice talking to you. You give me the perspective on some stuff I thought about, and optimistic as well. I'm also very optimistic, but it's clear that you've been a long time in the industry, and I love that. I love the positive attitude, man. I love the positive attitude.
Well, it is.
I'm
fun,
super
right?
positive. I'm super positive about this industry. I don't want it being like no, but I'm so passionately driven. So I don't want, and sometimes I might over exaggerate. Like no, mobile, no this, no that, because I'm almost like protective. It's almost like when you're protective of a child. Like don't do this, don't do that. You know what I mean? But of course, like if it helps the industry in a good way, then it's fine. And I think at the end of the day, it's better to have a more nuanced picture of stuff like you have, but in a sense it's good also to have extreme opinions like me also, because those can push for change, and I think it can push publishers to push stuff in the right way.
I agree. I mean, these conversations are important, and that's what drives change in our industry when people do think about these things. And I think what's awesome about our industry is people are willing to have these conversations too. I've never found that we shy away from difficult subjects. Maybe we don't have the conversations as publicly as some people would like, but we are having difficult conversations all the time.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, we are. I mean, that's also sometimes when I look at the movie industry, sometimes I feel a little bit sad because the movie industry is still till today are getting too much attention compared to the gaming industry, and we're still comparing ourselves too much. Like, look at the industry. I mean, they should really look at us and see like, oh wow, this is. I mean, they are doing it already, obviously, but the problem is, from a celebrity perspective, I mean. Might be bad, but we don't have as colorful people in this industry. All the celebrities, it helps, to get these what do you call it? Like, all this helps out a lot. But if people knew how much cool people there were in this industry, and if there was a way of like making them more get out there, it would be cool. But and you know what I mean, it's like I just want us industry to I don't want us to be compared like, oh, we're like movies, we're like that. No, the movies are like, for me it's like I mean, you do hear this a lot, that gaming is very early in the stage, and it's true. I mean, even just a simple fact from a production perspective, you can plan out a movie quite easily because you kind of know how to write script, how to plan a production, how to do a scene, how to put together a team. But in a game, we're still like very early, and hopefully people understand the culture and respect how gaming is done more and more, and we see that more and more in our our daily life, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think it's certainly an interest in it from players. Like, players want to know who the developers are. But the challenge is we're usually focused on making games, right? We're not out crashing cars or doing crazy things that put us in the news.
but still, I think it would be good just to get out there and make people understand how great the gaming industry is. I mean, I am myself. It's still like almost it's a dream I'm in, and I can't actually believe that. I mean, right now people actually know who I am and stuff. And for me, it's a dream come true. Just being in the industry, I'm so like proud to be part of it. I just want to. What I'm trying to say, sometimes I meet movie people and they're like, oh, this gaming industry, what is that? I'm like, what are you talking about? Are you kidding me? They will eat you up for breakfast. Are you kidding me? You're coming there with your movie. Look, I'm talking about, I've done 5 feature films. I say sometimes when people ask me, are you going to make another movie? I say yes. When I want to go on vacation, I'm going to make a movie. That's how easy it is to make a movie. I mean, I've done 5. I know what I'm talking about. I've done 3 games. You know what I mean? Because it's so much easier to make a movie because you do, but with making a game, there's so much complexity. I don't even have a discussion when still you can hear sometimes the question, is game art? I'm like, I'm not even going to discuss that. Because for me, if someone asks that, then I'm like, I'm not going to even waste my time. And I just feel that the gaming industry needs to have more respect from the general population, understanding what it is about,
I think you keep doing what you're doing. Get out there. You're a great personality.
Trust me. I will talk so much so Hollywood will be like, who the fuck is this guy? And I will make sure that literally that everybody understand what we're doing. I will keep talking about it as much as I can.
Fantastic. Well, I wish we could go for another 2 hours, but I want to be fair with your time. And
no worries, man. It was great talking to you, my man.
You too. And
hopefully I'll see you when I'm in LA the couple of months there.
I can't wait to show you around. It'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Cool, man.
Right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for the Game Maker's Notebook. For more information on the Academy of Interactive Arts and Sciences, our podcasts, and our other initiatives, please visit www.interactive.org.